News 8 Now presents the La Crosse Mayoral Debate.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Tragoski. Thank you for joining us for News 8 Now's Mayoral Debate. We want to welcome viewers from across our digital platforms. Our focus tonight is the issues that matter most to you. So here are the rules that both candidates have agreed to. Candidates will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Questions will be directed at a single candidate who will have 1 minute to respond. The opposing candidate will then have 1 minute for rebuttal. As the moderator, if I feel someone hasn't answered a question or if I feel that additional details might be helpful, I will ask for the candidates to follow up. The first question will go to the winner of the coin toss, and we will alternate between candidates. At the end of the program, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing statements. Now, let's meet the candidates. Community organizer and volunteer Shondell Washington Spivey. He co-founded Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge. He has served on the La Crosse School Board and is a member of Governor Tony Evers' Advisory Council on Equity and Inclusion. And City Council President Crosse. She has represented District 6. She has worked on the Board of Park Commissioners and the Heritage Preservation Commission. The candidates will field questions from our panel. News 8 Now's Alexandra Carter, Ken Kozarowski, Emily Brown, and Allison Fergut. Shondell, you won the coin toss, so let's start with you. Your opening statement.
First, thank you for having us here. For the past 17 years, I've dedicated myself to serving this city. I started my nonprofit Black to support Black and Brown youth and their families. I've served as an elected official in the La Crosse School Board to help make sure our school district is meeting the needs of its students and community. I've served on the Criminal Justice Management Council, advised Mayo Clinic, worked with the Franciscan Sisters, and currently sits on the Governor's Equity Council, all in an effort to make sure our city and our state work better for its people. This is the experience that I will bring with me to the role of mayor. We cannot solve today's problems with yesterday's politics. La Crosse needs a leader that has executive management experience. Our most vulnerable communities need a leader that centers compassion and dignity. Our small businesses and local nonprofits need a leader that understands the power of community and collaboration. I've given so much passion, time, and energy to this community that I can no longer sit by and watch the city leadership fail to engage the community. I am running for mayor because I know the kind of city La Crosse can be, and I want to be a part of bringing that vision to life.
Thank you, Shondell. Now we go to Crosse. Chris, your opening statement.
Thank you very much. La Crosse is at a crossroads. We have many opportunities and challenges before us. This is not the time for on-the-job training. We need a mayor who can hit the ground running on day one. And my experience in city government, as a business owner, as someone invested in the neighborhoods and the community, makes me uniquely qualified to lead La Crosse as our next mayor. Together, we can make La Crosse a city where everyone thrives. On council, I've focused on the issues that matter most to the people that I serve: public safety, protecting and enhancing our parks and open spaces, working collaboratively on housing and homelessness issues, and supporting local business. I'm the only candidate in the race with both government and business experience. I understand the struggles of small business and know how important they are to the future of the city. I know every La Crosse resident deserves a safe place to live. I'm excited to bring this knowledge and experience and love of the city to lead La Crosse as our next mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Our first topic is affordability. Alexandra Carter has the first question. For this question, we will start with you, Chris. Alexandra, go ahead.
With rising inflation affecting everything from groceries to housing, residents are struggling financially. What steps would you take in your first 100 days as mayor to immediately address some of these affordability concerns?
I'm going to question how the mayor can address affordability concerns such as prices of food. In 100 days, the mayor could be impacting by really working with council on affordable housing issues, which we have been doing. But as far as prices of consumer goods and products, gasoline, things like that. The mayor really doesn't have a role in that. So if you have something a little more specific on that related to city related, I'd be happy to answer that.
Can I ask that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So any specific city fees or services maybe you'd be willing to adjust to help ease the financial burden on some residents?
We will be presenting a budget that should be coming shortly. I have supported reinstating the large item pickup, and I also, for residents, I did not support charging the $25 fee to use the brush site, and I would introduce both of those.
Thank you. Shondell, over to you.
Yeah, so affordability is obviously something that has come up quite a bit over the last few months, and we need to make sure that we're working with our department heads as well as our city committees and our state legislators to ensure that we're advocating, one, for affordable housing, ensuring that we're working with employers to make sure that we're making sure that our constituents are receiving livable wages to assist with the inflation. As far as city assets and things, I think we start exploring what does it look like for folks that are coming in and commuting here. Is there parking passes that we can implement for both city or commuters that will help kind of offset some of the costs? But in addition, one of the things that I've talked about is having a city administrator, and I believe that a city administrator would be able to look deeply into some of the services and amenities and things that we're offering as a city and ensuring that we find a feasible way that would help with some of the affordable costs for our constituents.
Thank you, Shondell. And Shondell, you'll have the first opportunity to answer this next question. This question comes from Ken Kozarowski.
Anthony, thanks very much, and candidates, thank you for your time tonight. A city housing study conducted in 2024 found about half of city renters are cost burdened, and that means they spend more than 30% of the median area income on housing. Is there legislation the city can help implement to potentially reduce the number of cost burdened renters living in the city of La Crosse?
Yes. So as we talk about affordable housing, and one of my platform pieces has been about having a variety of housing and opening neighborhoods so that they're accessible to everyone. And I believe that is something that is extremely important. And so some of the things that I would look into as mayor is, one, seeing what state dollars can come to help us build affordable housing to help offset some of those costs. But in addition, making sure that when we have housing, that the rent is at an affordable rate. So when we talk about affordable housing, typically it's 30% of the median income. And sometimes I think we have to look at what would market rate housing or mixed housing be able to help. How would mixed housing be able to help individuals who might need some assistance, if there's rental programs that we can start looking at from a city level, and also, again, bringing in state and federal dollars.
Thank you, Shondell. Chris.
As I have on City Council, I would, as mayor, continue to support the affordable housing that we have put forward. We have an affordable housing project that is being built, almost done, on 4th and Jackson, that has units specifically for folks exiting homelessness and into that housing. There is another affordable housing project that is going in the old Lincoln Middle School. That would be another low-income tax credit project. And then the Haven on Main, which they have just been demolishing the old Pink Palace, that is a third affordable housing project. All of those have been incentivized and helped by the city of La Crosse, and as mayor, I would continue to do that work, incentivizing affordable housing. I also would say that on market rate rentals, I would not put any cost controls on market rate housing. I believe in a free market society as well.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Emily, and Chris, you'll have the first chance to answer this question. Emily, go ahead.
Yes, the U.S. Department of Labor shows prices for childcare are untenable for families and workers, with childcare workers receiving $13.22 an hour, which is below the living wage in most states. This is making it hard for employers to attract workers, leaving families with very little options. The childcare sectors need substantial government investment. What is your plan to tackle this issue of low wages with employees and make it an attractive and sustainable workplace for talent?
Boy, there's a lot in that question. Thank you for that. Childcare, and I, as a former single mom, that impact of childcare was incredibly difficult, so I firsthand understand the issues that families have paying for childcare. On the local level, what we could be doing is talking with local businesses to see how we could assist in helping them set up their own daycare facilities. And I think that doing that collaboration and working with local business will support that local business, also supporting the wages and making sure that their staff have a place and a safe place for their children when they're at work and in the workforce.
Thank you. Shondell.
So here's the reality is that all of these issues are interconnected. So if we're talking about affordability, we're talking about childcare, we're talking about housing, all those things you have to work on simultaneously and together. And I think the biggest thing would be making sure that the mayor, and as mayor, what I would do is work with our higher education institutions, our school district, work with our businesses, and our community to come together and create a vision for La Crosse to address all of these issues and to figure out where we could best start, right? So it might be working with employers and talking to business owners about livable wages. And then in addition, it might be looking at what are some things that we can be doing different in our city that other cities are doing to offset cost, a cost burden for some of the amenities that we have. If it's about lowering taxes, things of that nature, I think are some very high level things that I would look into as mayor.
Thank you, Shondell. Our next question will come from Allison Fergott, and Shondell, you'll have the first opportunity to respond to this question. Allison?
Anthony, thank you. Year after year, La Crosse finds itself working with a tight city budget. Are you in favor of advocating for Wisconsin to allow municipalities like ours to adopt a local sales tax in order to address city needs?
Yes, I am. I think that it is time for us to start exploring other avenues instead of just raising taxes or trying to just add more costs to the citizens. We do have to start looking at some other innovative ways, and if a sales tax will definitely help us offset some of the budget. But to be honest, it won't be the only thing that we need to do. We would also need to add some other innovative strategies to address cost in our city.
Thank you. Chris?
So a sales tax is an interesting option. I know that the legislature allowed Milwaukee, or it was Milwaukee County, and I'm not sure if it was the entire county or just the city, to add that sales tax, and that has helped that community. I am not sure if I would want to add an additional tax on our residents. I am hoping that what we can do is collaborate with our state legislature and the governor and making sure that the cities get their share of shared revenue that was stagnant since 2010. We really need that extra money to support our public safety, our firefighters, and our police department. That is a huge part of our operating budget, and no one in the city wants those departments cut. So I would suggest and advocate for more shared revenue from the state, and I'm open to discussions on sales tax.
Thank you, Chris. Our next topic is the homelessness situation in La Crosse. Chris, you'll have the opportunity to respond first to this question from Ken Kozarowski.
Thank you, Anthony. The city needed to use almost its entire contingency fund to pay for marsh cleanup efforts this past year tied to homelessness. Is increasing the city's budget to handle future cleanups a viable path to dealing with the homelessness situation, or is cleanup payments an inefficient use of taxpayer dollars to address the problem?
All right, thank you for that question. I would like to start by saying that housing is a human right, and we know that homelessness is a really complex issue. I think that in the past, the mayor had made some missteps on handling the situation. It did lead to the circumstances that had occurred. I don't believe that the city should be budgeting for future cleanups. We do have a ban on encampments right now in public places, It was not safe, it was not humane, and it was not dignified. What we should be doing is investing in more housing and making sure that the Pathways Home Plan is working properly, and also making sure that we have preventive measures to keep people from slipping out of homelessness.
Thank you. Shondell, you're up.
Yes. First, I would like to kind of go back to the last question and just say La Crosse County was able to do a sales tax, and that really helped their budget. So I just want people to keep that in mind. In regards to the unhoused population, I am and have been a big advocate for Pathways Home because I believe it is bringing strong collaboration between the county and the city, and that the city should commit more resources to Pathways Home to ensure that we, one, are making sure that we're following that plan with fidelity. And so that also includes looking at how do we build a surge shelter before breaking up encampments. Now the encampment ban has happened, and so now we need to, with haste, make sure that we create some sort of surge shelter for the unhoused populations to go. So when we broke the encampments, it made it very difficult for nonprofit organizations that are doing the work to be able to connect with the unhoused populations and make sure that they receive the services that they need.
Shondell, thank you. We stick with the topic of homelessness. This next question comes from Emily Brown, and Shondell, you'll be the first to answer it. Emily, go ahead.
A follow-up to your answer, is it time the city of La Crosse invested in a long-term helping solution and find a way to establish a shelter that operates 24/7?
So to answer this question, what I would say is oftentimes people think of local government as just the four things, right? Infrastructure, sewer, fire, police. And the reality is we've relied a lot on the county to be able to take some of those heavy lifting around human services. And I think that we're moving into a new place where it's kind of time for the city to also own up and take some of the responsibilities to ensure that we're providing services for our community. And we just need to make sure that we do that in the right way. So working with local nonprofit organizations or private organizations, businesses, the county, and the community to ensure that we're making do with the money that we have, but then also making sure we're providing services to our unhoused populations and other vulnerable populations as well.
Thank you, Shondell. Chris.
Could you just repeat the question again?
Absolutely.
Please.
Is it time the city of La Crosse invested in a long-term helping solution and find a way to establish a shelter that operates 24/7?
Should the city invest in a long-term shelter? I am going to say no. Homelessness is a regional, a state, and a federal issue. The burden of housing folks should not fall upon a single municipality. We need regional help, we need regional support, we need state support, we need federal support. The city already, what I would tell you is we allocated $1.2 million to assembling the properties for the collective on 4th, which is creating housing for folks who are homeless. It is also creating low-income housing at the location. The city did just allocate and award $1.2 million through the Economic Development and Community Development Committee to Cooley Cap to buy housing, and also to Coruna to expand on their services. So the city is doing that work already.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Allison, and Chris, you'll have the first chance to answer this question. Allison, go ahead.
Thank you. We've talked about the camping ban a little bit tonight. Since Common Council enacted that camping ban, there has been less camping on city parks, especially in the downtown area. However, those who work most closely with the homeless say it's harder to reach them, and that more people have died as a result of not having access to certain services. Are you in favor of keeping the ban as it currently is? Why or why not? And if not, what should change?
Thank you. I was in favor of that camping ban last August. A majority of the council did support that. As I stated earlier, an encampment is not dignified, it is not safe, it is not a good place for people to be. It does not help end homelessness. It is also not a viable solution to homelessness. So I would agree that we need to work harder on the Pathways Home Plan. It is moving forward, but an encampment is not a good use of city land, and it is not safe for the folks who would be living in the encampments as well.
Thank you. Shondell.
Can you repeat the question?
For sure. So since Common Council enacted that camping ban, there's been less camping on city parks. However, some people say there's been negative consequences to the ban. Are you in favor of keeping the ban as it currently is? Why or why not? And if not, what should change?
So, like I said earlier, the encampment ban definitely made it difficult for local agencies that were working with the unhoused populations to be able to find them. Now, while I will agree an encampment isn't necessarily going to be the best option, but neither is just having unhoused people kind of wander and find shelter anywhere, and which makes it difficult for us to be able to house them. Now, I will say one of the things that I truly want to highlight and appreciate is that with Pathways Home, we've been able to house 121 people, and that's as of the report in February. And so I'm hoping I know that program will continue strong. And also, what we need to make sure, what we didn't do and what we need to make sure we do is actually have a viable option for the unhoused population to be able to be housed. If that's, again, creating a surge shelter, which is actually step 2 of the Pathways Home Plan, but we went to step 3 before even addressing step 2, which was very problematic and actually caused more issues and more harm.
Thank you. We turn now to Alexandra. Shondell, you'll have the first chance to answer this question. Alexandra, over to you.
Anthony, thank you. We are currently seeing federal funding being slashed at unprecedented levels. How would you secure the necessary funding for your homelessness initiatives if those federal grants are reduced?
As an agency that was almost impacted by some of those federal funding freezes, as Black, we do work with our runaway homeless youth populations, and we have youth advocates that do that work in partnership with RIMES and Geshia, as well as the YWCA and the Seven Rivers LGBT Resource Center. Federal funding right now, I think every day it makes me a little nervous when we talk about removing funding from very essential programs. And I think that what we would have to do, and what I'm used to doing as a nonprofit executive director, is work with the community and say, how can we fund these issues? Are there donors that's willing to help, that are passionate about this work? Is there organizations willing to collaborate and put money together to solve the issue? Are there businesses willing to come together to solve the issue? And it's really about taking a collaborative approach to bring resources together, and make viable solutions.
Thank you. Chris.
Would you repeat it again, please? It's hard to remember it from person to person.
Certainly, no problem. We're seeing federal funding being slashed right now at unprecedented levels. How would you secure the necessary funding for your homelessness initiatives if that funding is cut?
So we have already allocated all the ARPA money that we had put aside for homelessness. It was several millions of dollars. We also did house folks in the Econo Lodge a couple of years ago. That took up a lot of money. So we have allocated probably over $3 million for homelessness, but what we've done lately was put it into housing. So as far as federal funds, the city doesn't rely on a lot of federal funds that we use for homelessness. It's a very small amount through community development block grant funds. If those were threatened, I would suggest we would probably have to rely on collaborating with the county, since, as we heard, they do collect a 0.5% sales tax, and they tend to have a budget surplus where the city runs in the negative.
Thank you, Chris. We want to turn now to policy. Emily Brown has the first question, and Chris, we'll start with you for this one. Emily?
Thank you, Anthony. 95% of the incarcerated are released back into society, with many of them finding it hard to attain employment. Places like the Bin Store have helped bridge this gap by employing felons. But is it enough? What is your plan to get the recently released back into work?
A plan to get the recently released back into work. I'm going to try to punt on that because I'm again going to say we are going to have to collaborate with the county. Municipalities don't have the resources or the staff to do that work. Where I would say we are moving ahead is again that we create the housing that helps folks who are coming out of homelessness to find a place to live. So the homes that Cooley Cap will be purchasing, the Karuna housing, that could all be used to assist, but the city really does not have a department that handles that situation.
Thank you. Shondell.
So I don't know that it is necessarily needing to punt it. I think you walk alongside the agencies that are doing the work. So when I think of, when you talk about our incarceration population, you're talking about working with the jails and the sheriff department to ensure that there's services that's provided inside the jails for the incarcerated population, and also working with agencies like 211, Project Proven, and things of that nature who allows case management to happen in the jails, and also as the individuals transition over into whatever housing setting it is. I do agree that we definitely have to make sure the housing is there and available, because oftentimes what can happen is landlords can have the choice of whether or not we house you versus your criminal record. And so that would be something we would need to look into. In addition to when you talk about employment, looking at opportunities like Black Owns Mama K's, and we also employ folks who are coming out of incarceration.
Thank you. Shondell, you'll be the first to respond to this next question from Allison.
Thank you, Anthony. From new housing to renovating our parks, both of you have ideas for how to improve La Crosse, but ultimately those plans come with a price tag. What would you cut in the budget in order for your plans to come to fruition?
I think, well, I would say as mayor, it would be working with our finance director and our department heads to explore what it is that we are currently spending a lot of dollars on, what are some valuable options to bring in more money into the city, if that's advocating at a state level or a federal level. The goal would be to not have to cut anything, obviously, but also in reality, we don't know. I personally don't know what that looks like. And so I would definitely want to work with my team to ensure that we explore the options necessary to make things happen. In addition to, one of the things that I also would look at is, again, a city administrator. And I know that we say that's a heavy price tag, and the reality is that a city administrator, that's their job as well, is to serve at the leisure of the mayor to enact visions and to find the money and to make sure that we bring that money into the city to do what's necessary for our community.
Thank you. Chris.
I don't believe it's necessary to cut anything in the budget to achieve small incremental improvements in our parks or in our neighborhoods. There are grant programs available. AARP has an impact grant, and we in our neighborhood are going to apply for that. We would like to do some asphalt art crosswalks, and to make sure that pedestrians are visible and the crosswalks are visible. That is low cost, but it is an impact. We are doing a beautification project on Cass Street currently. It should be coming into fruition this spring, and that was funded by TID dollars. So in the neighborhoods where there are TIDs, some have funding available to do these smaller projects, and I think small projects such as beautification or a new play structure in a park can really enhance and not have a budget cut.
Thank you so much. And Chris, you'll be the first to respond to this next question. This question comes from Alexandra.
You both have different professional backgrounds. Chris as City Council President, Shondell as nonprofit leader and community activist. Do you have the experience to manage the city's $72 million budget and diverse department heads?
Currently, I do talk with staff and department heads on a regular basis. As president of the park board, there's a lot of collaboration with the park director. I will also say that I did own a small business for 27 years. There was budgeting, there was managing staff. It certainly wasn't $72 to $74 million, but after 27 years, you start to understand how to work with people and how to set a budget and keep a budget. So I really believe that the experience I have as a business owner and as council president and local government experience makes me well qualified to lead as our next mayor.
Thank you. Shondell.
As a nonprofit executive director, I have worked with over $1 million in grants and contracts and things of that nature as well. So no, I've not worked with a $75 million budget, but through the experience of both as an executive director as well as director of Upward Bound, where I worked with federal dollars and federal funding, as well as I worked at Western Technical College, and I managed a budget there. And when I worked in the school district, I managed budgets there. So I do have experience with managing budgets, in addition to executive management experience. So I've worked with teams who report to me to make sure that they feel comfortable in their roles and responsibilities and making sure that they're collaborating with one another. And I believe that's what we need in our next mayor, is someone that has that managerial experience to bring departments together, to bring the community together, private organizations, businesses, to ensure that we are doing what is best for our community.
Thank you. And Shondell, you'll be the first to respond to this next question from Ken.
The mayor often serves as the chief representative externally from the city when it comes to involvement with the media, like us. Mayor Reynolds has staff who insist that any request for any public official, including himself, go through that staff first, even if media organizations know exactly who they need to speak to when it comes to policy issues. If you're elected mayor, how important would transparency and accessibility would be for you?
We're knocking on doors and talking to people in the community, and I've hosted several events. I've guest bartended, I've guest baristaed at different locations, and one of the things that have consistently come up is something similar to that, is the accessibility of the mayor. And the reality is that our mayor should be accessible to the people. Our mayor should be not on just on the sixth floor, but they need to be out in the community, talking to people and addressing the needs of the folks, hearing the needs of the people, and being able to go back to city council and go back to department heads and set a clear vision of how we address some of these issues. And so as mayor, that is what my dedication and commitment to this community would be to be a visible mayor out there, advocating in the state, federally, making sure that we're building partners across the state with other mayoral or other municipalities and things of that nature.
Thank you. Chris.
Transparency and accessibility, yes, are incredibly important for the mayor's office. I have been a small business owner for 27 years. I understand touching the public. I know what that's like. As mayor, I would make sure that I was accessible and everything we do was transparent. I would be out in the community doing coffees with Kalo. I also would love to do a traveling city hall, set up maybe at Festival Foods or at the library or some other places where folks could come and meet the mayor. Accessibility with the media. Each mayor is going to be able to look at that and decide that in their own way, what works best for them. If it is an issue and if there are concerns with the media, I'm sure that I would be open to discussing that and making changes where necessary to make sure that the public understands the role of the mayor and city government.
Thank you so much, Chris. We have a lot more to get to tonight. The News 8 Now mayoral debate will continue after a quick break. Welcome back to the La Crosse mayoral debate. We now want to shift to the future of La Crosse and things like development. Allison Fergott, you have this question. This question will first be directed at Chris. Allison?
Thank you, Anthony. In April, a new payment schedule will go into effect for the city's parking ramps as the schedule for paid parking extends. Do you believe there should be any other changes to parking in downtown areas, especially paid parking? And considering as well the city's tight budget with that?
Should there be additional paid parking in downtown La Crosse? I have spoken with business owners about that, having a business downtown 27 years and understanding the reality of the parking downtown. We currently have a parking area that is overbuilt. We do not need the amount of parking that we have. I do not believe paying for additional parking is good business sense. The local businesses downtown are still trying to recuperate and come back full since COVID. Our boots on the street are not back to what they were, and what we should be doing is incentivizing small business, making sure we support them and not putting more difficulties with adding paid parking. What I did have that happened a few years ago was the upper level of a ramp was discounted for part-time employees downtown, and we should be doing more of that to incentivize folks.
Thank you. Shondell.
While I understand, people's dilemma with paying for parking, the reality is that we need to be looking at other ways to bring in money to the city and making sure that we're being financially responsible. Parking and paying for parking, it does a little bit, but I don't believe that it's going to put a significant dent in $1 million deficit that the city holds. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at realistic options and making sure that we're being financially responsible, unlike some of the things we've done in the past where we've paid $198,000 for security for 3 months at a park to pretty much monitor or harass the homeless individuals that were there.
Thank you. Shondell, you'll have the first opportunity to answer this next question. This next question comes from Alexandra.
The Kmart property development has faced numerous delays. How would your administration handle similar stalled projects, and any tools you would use to encourage timely completion?
So one of the things is really looking at, as an outsider, being able to go into the mayor's office and explore what were some of the hangups that was happening with the Kmart building. I, for one, thought it was a huge eyesore after a while of just kind of being promised over and over and over again by the city council, current city leadership, that this building was going to be torn down and it was going to be housing, and we were kind of showing us the images. And so it was kind of this like cell of hope that was happening. And there were so many other things that we possibly could have looked at to do with that building. But I'm glad that we're looking at turning it into housing. But the reality is there must have been something that was there that caused these issues. If it was zoning codes, if it was a failure to, submit permits, et cetera. But as mayor, I would have to look into that and then see what exactly can we do differently. And this is also, again, where I think working with our department heads to ensure that everyone in the community understands how government works.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you for that question. We had a recently completed housing study where it was predicted we needed 230 units a year for 10 years to kind of fill in and help with our housing crunch. And I do call it a housing crunch. Right now, within 5 years, we have over 2,000 housing units coming on the market. So we are going to be attaining that goal in probably half the time. So our city government and our developers are working really hard and working hard together to solve the problems of housing. I think in the past, the construction costs were high, but now we have a lot of development coming in. I'm excited to see what's happening. We have River Point North, which has had its first occupants in, and I would still continue to incentivize housing projects where necessary.
Thank you, Chris. Ken has the next question, and Chris, you'll have the first opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Anthony. I want to touch on redevelopment. Some efforts like the South Community Library and Lincoln Middle School inevitably kind of came nose to nose with the Heritage Preservation Commission, and the outgoing mayor was at odds with that commission when it came to designating the South Library building as a historic building. As mayor, and potentially just in general, is there a line where the desire to preserve La Crosse's history in the form of its buildings gets in the way of modern needs like housing, as we've been touching on all night?
Thank you. Well, that is a question near and dear to my heart. As an advocate for the last 30 years for historic preservation, as mayor, I would continue to support fully our historic preservation ordinance. What is happening with buildings like Lincoln School is now that it has historic status, it can now receive tax credits. Those tax credits combined with the low income tax credits are making it able for a developer to renovate and rehab that building and keep that piece of history in the city for all of us to enjoy while providing affordable housing. So I would not see it at odds with development at all. I see redevelopment of historic properties as good economic development and good common sense.
Thank you. Shondell.
I am in agreement with keeping the historic preservation of our communities. And also, we also have to start looking and being more forward thinking. Oftentimes when I talk to folks in La Crosse, there's kind of been this generality around just being stagnant and not necessarily thinking about what the future could look like. And the reality is, when we start exploring where La Crosse has been and how far it's come and where it's going, we need to be able to make some changes, right? You think about what was here 20, 30, 40 years ago, none of these new developments would be happening if we had not been able to make rezoning changes and things of that nature. So it's time for us to start really thinking about a forward La Crosse. What developments do we need to have in this community to attract and retain individuals and families in this city?
Thank you so much. Our next question will come from Emily, and Shondell, you'll have the first opportunity to respond. Emily?
All right, thank you, Anthony. In order to create a more diverse atmosphere for employment in schools and neighborhoods, are there any plans to attract new types of cultural establishments like restaurants or cultural meeting spaces to the area?
So as a nonprofit founder of Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge, one of the things that we do is we have developed a Black Professionals Network. And that network essentially is us coming together, building community, working to retain professionals in this area from cultural backgrounds. And that would be something that I would think that I would try to expand upon by working with other cultural organizations as mayor. One of the things that I think we are really strong at is being able to collaborate across difference and making sure that we do that in the right way as a community to attract and retain individuals. And also looking at and being an accessible mayor, going out to those communities and saying, what do you need or what do you want to see in this community? And working with those individuals and the other department heads as well as nonprofit organizations and businesses to say, how can we bring things here? And also highlighting with Explore La Crosse our cultural festivals and things of that nature.
Thank you. Chris?
The mayor has currently instituted a new community enhancement grant program, and there are many cultural activities that can apply for that grant funding now. I am on the Economic Development Committee that will oversee that. It's a great question. This is coming up next Wednesday, and we will be talking about some of the events and those nonprofits and organizations that are applying for that grant funding. That is an area that could be expanded upon by the mayor if the mayor chose, and I think that that is a really great way to bring some cultural diversity to the city. I believe it helps with Juneteenth. I believe it helps with Indigenous Peoples Day. Those are just a couple that I know of, so I would be proud to continue the community enhancement grants and maybe expand them.
Thank you. Our next topic is a mix of questions from our panelists. Chris, you'll be the first to respond to this question. It comes from Alexandra.
Mayor Mitch Reynolds' time leading La Crosse is almost over. That said, what letter grade would you give him?
Well, Boy, what letter grade? I would give him different grades for different areas. As in school, you don't get an overall grade. You might get 1 grade for math, 1 for spelling. I would give Mayor Reynolds maybe a D in communication with council. I think there were some difficulties that our past mayor had with council members. Being a council member myself, I would not have that difficulty. I have a working relationship with council, and it is a strong council week mayor, so we really need to have that collaboration and that communication. The mayor is a very smart man, and on working with staff and trying to solve problems, I'd give him a B. Overall, I guess if I had to grade him, I'd give him a C.
Thank you. Shondell.
I don't know that I would be able to necessarily grade the mayor. What I will say is, knowing that we have a strong council week mayor, that some of the missteps that Mayor Mitch Reynolds might have taken also should be the city council should also be held accountable for some of those missteps as well, since they are the governing body of this city. And so I don't necessarily want to grade Mitch. What I want to say is that if elected and when elected mayor, I would ensure that I do everything in my ability to learn the job, to make sure that I'm visible and there for the community, to work well with the city council, our department heads, to ensure that we're doing what is best for La Crosse.
Thank you. Shondell, you'll have the first response to this next question from Ken.
ChooseLaCrosse.com offers some personal opinions from residents on what inspired them to move to La Crosse. And that same webpage highlights a few different aspects of the city, like the outdoors, low cost of living, and several industries like our health systems. What do you believe most La Crosse residents truly value about this city that inspires them to live here? And how should those values drive overall city government decisions?
When I moved to La Crosse 17 years ago, I would say one of the things that really attracted me to this space was the nature and the friendliness of the people. And when I talk to folks on the doors, and again, just being out in the community over the years, we've all kind of said the same thing. The thing that keeps us here, the things that attract us most about this community is the nature, it's the people, it's building like authentic connections. La Crosse doesn't necessarily always have a lot of things to do, and I think that's something that we can definitely work on, is building more attractions, so to speak, in this community to retain folks. Because I've also talked to people, and when they tell me that they're leaving La Crosse, they'll say, like, it's not that I don't like the city, it's just there's not a lot for me to do, and I can go to a larger city and have more, amenities and attractions. And so some of those things are, again, the nature, it's the people, it's the community. Like, I think we have a very big, vibrant community, and we need to continue to work and elevate that.
Thank you. Chris.
Well, we do have a population decline in La Crosse. And what we want here is La Crosse to be a vibrant, amazing city where people want to live, work, and raise a family. And in order to do that, there are a couple things that I would do. One would be supporting local business. Local business is the heart of our community, and it is the economic driver. Another thing that I would do is making sure that we have safe neighborhoods and making sure that we have housing of all types, and prioritizing affordable housing, mixed-use housing, townhouses, making sure that the housing is safe as well. And then lastly, it's focusing on our quality of life. And that means those things that people value about here and living here, and it's our neighborhood assets. And those are parks, pools, trails, and our open spaces. I would encourage and enhance and protect those spaces.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris, you'll be the first to respond to this next question from Emily.
What do you hope to accomplish in the first 30 days as mayor?
30 days. Oh boy. 30 days would really, working with department heads and making sure we understand the budget. The budget will already be kind of molded. It won't be to the Plan Commission until late May, but really meeting with department heads and the finance department and making sure that I have a grasp on the budget. That probably won't take me very long because I have done 6 budgets already. I would really like to be able to meet with every neighborhood association and see what those neighborhoods feel as though they need to have safe, vibrant neighborhoods. I think that would be important. And also just getting out in the city and talking further to folks, working with stakeholders, working with residents to find out what they're looking for the future of the city.
Thank you. Shondell.
The first 30 days for me is going to be looking like trying to build rapport, or not trying, really building rapport with the department heads as well as all city workers. So that's going to be visiting departments, spending a day or two down there, working with them, building rapport, having them kind of explain what it is that they have a vision for, what things have been working, what has not been working, what do they want to see happen as far as their department goes. Doing a ride along on the bus to work, talk to constituents that's riding transit, making sure I get out there in the community. But first, what I want to make sure is that the city staff is going to be used to seeing me as the constituent Shondell Spivey, and I need to get them to see me what it looks like for me to be the mayor, and as they report to me. So making sure we build that rapport and understanding of who Shondell, the mayor and the leader of this city is, and what my expectations are and what their expectations are of me.
Thank you, Shondell. And Shondell, you'll be the first to respond to this next question from Allison.
Thank you, Anthony. Back in July, the Common Council voted not to fill the vacant District 5 seat, leaving residents there without representation. If a seat were to become open during your term as mayor, would you advocate for a special election to fill that seat? Why or why not?
I believe representation is important, and so I would strongly advocate that we fill that seat. I feel like Mayor Mitch definitely did advocate to fill that seat, and it was the City Council's leadership that declined to fill that seat. And I think that was a complete misstep. And when we talk about the 5th District specifically, one of the things that I've heard my opponent say was that that district was still represented because everyone on the council represents everyone in the city. And I just don't think that that is a fair judgment. I don't think that is true. I think that we truly missed an important voice by not having that district seat filled. And it is extremely important that every district seat is filled, and we do what we need to do if we need to appoint, hold interviews, hold special elections. But it's definitely important that we make sure everyone is represented and heard in our community.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you for that question. Student values are the same values that I have. Students are worried about affordability in housing. They're worried about safe neighborhoods and safe streets. So what I would say is my district represents a large percentage of the student population. And they do talk to me, and there is representation. I get calls from students who live not only on campus, but in my district, because I know how to get the work done. As far as safety, former Councilmember Hammeister in District 5 wanted some additional lighting, and because she was new and a college student, she didn't understand how it worked, so I helped her. But in the end, I did work with engineering to get the lighting so that students had a safe street on Crosse Street by getting that lighting. Also, I worked with students on crossing West Avenue and connecting them with the folks they needed to at the DOT to make sure their voices were heard with the reconstruction of Highway 35.
Thank you. The time has come for closing statements. You will each have 1 minute. We start with Chris. Chris, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this. The forum went faster than I thought it would. So we're just about done. I love La Crosse, and my experience and knowledge of city government, I'm ready to lead this city to the future. As I visit with voters at the doors, they share with me their hopes for the future and their concerns. Uncertainty and chaos in Washington, polarized politics in Madison. We need a steady, experienced leader here in La Crosse for the future. We have an opportunity here to work to solve tough problems. I bring people together. That is why one of my opponents in the primary, Vicki Markison, has endorsed me. I know how to balance a budget, make tough decisions, prioritize what is most important to the people that I serve. I've done it on City Council. Now I'm asking for your support to be your next mayor and put my experience to work for our city. I would be honored for your vote on April 1st. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Shondell, your closing statement.
Throughout this election, you've heard two different visions of La Crosse. Mine is about moving the community forward and making a community where everyone belongs. As mayor, I will commit to protecting the historic nature of our city while also making sure that every neighborhood is accessible to individuals and families of all backgrounds. I will protect the green space and natural beauty that draws in tourists while making sure our most vulnerable populations are treated in a compassionate and dignified way. Business as usual is not working for us, and the lack of accountability is not working for us. We need innovative, collaborative, and compassionate energy in our city's government, and I decided to run for this position because I could no longer sit idly by while La Crosse continued to fall short of its greatest potential. La Crosse, you deserve a mayor that will move the city forward, develop a holistic vision, and someone who cares about everyone in this community. So I ask that you join my vision and join the many entities that have endorsed me, such as the La Crosse Democratic Party, Working Families Party, Wisconsin AFL-CIO, SEIU, Citizens Action, Wisconsin Progress, Planned Parenthood, and so many others. La Crosse, put your best foot forward by voting for me on April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our debate. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to each of the candidates for their participation. But most of all, I want to thank you, the viewers, for taking the time to watch. Your engagement in the electoral process is crucial. I strongly encourage each and every one of you to vote in the April election. Your participation will help shape the future of the community. I also ask you to encourage your friends, family, and neighbors to vote as well. Every vote counts. In the coming days leading up to the April election, I hope you will continue following the election news. And once again, thank you for joining us.